And there we go.
And we're back, baby. We are back. What is going on, Dan? It's so happy to get connected again. I know last week was a little bit weird and funky, but you've been crushing it, my man. But I know you missed me. I know you missed me. But what was going on?
We have, you know what we have. I was saying that thinking on the weekend, and I'm going, man. I don't know if I'm as good of a game show host as you are from Fridays. I chose some good questions, and I had people going, oh yeah, but it was missing the Mohammed touch. That's it for sure, brother.
The Midas touch. When he turns everything into gold, I turn everything into I don't know. We'll
Fun.
figure that out. Yeah, exactly. It's a fun. There we go. Into the fun day Fridays. But you know what? I love the discussions. I rewatched it over the weekend. That all the episodes you had, and I think all the values that we talked about last week about being partnerships. And from every single place, and everything always brings me back, Dan, to like when we had like Greg and we had Rico on. Like those are some of like the great episodes that we've kind of had, and the conversations that we're having, and seeing the comments specifically for people. I know like me being part of the host here, I want to ask you, like, what was kind of your kind of takeaways from last week specifically? What did you feel right about? Because I know we talked about, what was it? Belief is Irresistible by the good old Phil Knight of Nike. But I would
Yes.
love to get your thoughts, brother.
I think it goes back. Um, it's fairly simple,
Mm.
this industry, and when you operate with the right mentality, right? Like it's simple, and I think everything is. I should probably change that phrase. Everything is simple with belief,
Yeah.
right? If we really believe in what we're doing, and unequivocally just like this is what I want to do. Um, Work becomes fun. Don't get me wrong; it could be exhausting, and you could be exhausted, but it's fun. When somebody asks you a question, you get excited to talk about it.
Yes.
And this to me is one of the most important things that we can have in any career, is the ability to be excited to talk about it, and
Yes.
be excited to wake up every morning and you know operate at our highest levels. I won't even say go to work, because it's not go to work. It's operate at our highest levels. You and I had a conversation last week, and we agreed to something that maybe we'll talk about midweek or something. But um, it's created this new energy of excitement for me, and it's no longer a chore to do what I was dreading at doing.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Because there's a different persona behind it, and this belief in being able to help your customer, the belief in saying, and some things that Greg said the week before, where he's like, how are you going to make it easier for me to run my business? And then it's like, you start thinking of this, and you're like, oh my gosh, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this. Okay, I do believe in what I do, because we can get torn down pretty quick, brother.
Hmm.
Our name is on somebody else's service as a broker. Let's call a spade a spade. The people we choose make us look good or not so good. And it's man, last week was awesome. Was awesome when Tyler was on Wednesday, and then we had Bill on Tuesday, and it was just, the conversations were just spectacular, right? And yeah, it was awesome, man.
I
Awesome.
love it. You had some amazing people and amazing conversations and thought provoking. I think that's really important. So let's get to today's topic. So for those who are watching for the very first time, this is Sales Chatter, the logistics podcast where we aim to help 10,000 sales reps generate 1 million in gross profit in less than 12 months. With our mission, I'm your host, co-host, exactly, the logistics month. I'm a little bit rusty today, so I don't know. Maybe it's the allergies or something like that. But I
I
got
think
my
we're
main
just
man.
hosts, brother.
Yeah,
We're hosts. There's no co-host,
yeah, yeah,
brother.
yeah.
That
We're just the
shit.
host
We're
here, but we
hosts.
got Dano Mac. So let's get into today's video, and then we'll talk about basically our scheduling topic for the week.
Yes.
Welcome to the HPLS podcast. Live, relevant, and high performance information, conversations, and education weekly.
There we go.
Yes, sir.
So what's our theme for the week, Dano?
So our theme for the week is scheduling to win. And before we get into it, I'll map something out for everyone that might not, or maybe you're just joining us for the first time, or might not see the way we're stepping into things here. So we created season 5 2 weeks ago when this season kicked off. And what Ryan and I decided we're going to do is we're going to do 5 weeks in a season. And this season is becoming a high performance sales rep. So week 1, we talked about how to ask for money and how to ask for more money. Week 2, we got into belief and really truly starting to believe in what you do. Now, week 3, we're going to talk about scheduling to win. Mm-hmm. There's something to be said about scheduling yourself for greatness, and whatever that greatness means to you, and I'll put it to you like this. So your garage might be a mess until winter when you have to put a car in it. Then all of a sudden the garage becomes a priority to clean, right? And it's pretty much my garage. I clean it, and like 2 weeks later, it's a disaster again. And I clean it, and I get into another project, and it's a disaster. But once winter comes, and my wife needs to put her car in the garage is spotless.
Yes.
Right. So it's this priority of events in our day. Jed Blunt talks a lot about the golden hours. So how are you going to schedule yourself to win during the day? And we're talking multiple levels here. So throughout this week, make sure you pay attention to the different guests we have on, because we're going to talk about when to really dive into that creative side. Like, how, I don't know about you guys, but for me, at that 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon point, like my head starts doing this, Ryan. I'm like, and I have to create the energy to keep the day going. Well, how do you do that? How do you actually schedule that so it becomes a habit? How do you schedule cold calls? How do you schedule follow-ups? How do you schedule working with your team? How do you schedule your education? Like all of this comes in the day. And it's actually when you look at what your schedule holds, and when you start to implement a schedule in your career and in your life, I do believe things change for the great. You start seeing a whole lot of really cool things happen, Ryan. Really cool things.
And I think it's just a testament. So I actually want to take the viewers, everyone who's watching, to when you and I met. So you and I met in 2019, and it was a seminar that you put on in the company that
was it only 2019?
Only 2019, brother. I got married.
I feel like I've known you for like a decade.
See, there we go. You're not annoyed at me yet, right?
No.
So one of the things that you did in your seminar was actually you showed a schedule. You showed a schedule, and for me, we were brand new. Like I didn't know who you were, and I was only maybe a month into that new company. So your information and everything that you talked about was really important to me, and it was something that I latched on right away because I'm like, well, I got to build a book of business. I wasn't going to bring my book of business from my last company because the whole non-competes, but I believe in like integrity too. If I sign something, that means I agreed to it, right? So I wouldn't complain after the fact. But anyways, you talked about like scheduling, and there was one thing there in the schedule that I was like, holy crap, this is so cool. So I don't know if you remember this, Dan, but you would schedule an hour of day to like do like really nothing in terms of like your actual work. So for me, what that looked like is like I would just go pick up one of the guitars in the back or pick up one of my instruments and literally just play for an hour, and then kind of get my mind off things. And that will usually happen after lunch. I know you kind of like schedule like training, like reading books and different things throughout the day. And I was like, Dan, it was mind opening to me because it was like at the previous places you get there at a certain time. So most of the time at 8 o'clock, and then you're like, what am I gonna do right now? Am I gonna make some calls? Am I gonna go check on these loads if I'm doing my self tracking? But you're like, I'm just gonna go there and bang out calls for like 7 to 8 hours, and then I go home all depleted, like you're talking about energy at 2 or 3 o'clock. But I get home and then not wanting to talk. My excuse would be like I wouldn't want to talk to my girlfriend, who's my wife, was just like, oh, I've talked to like so many people during the day. So that means I'm taken away from our relationship from there.
Yep.
So one thing when I have with scheduling, Dan, that's been really helpful for me is that I look at the week. So
Yes.
we have 168 hours in a week, and I actually like to put it as like 168 poker chips. And I've started doing
Yep.
that at the beginning of the year. And I take one poker chip, we got the one here, and I'm like, okay, what am I going to invest this poker chip into? And that represents an hour of my time. And it's been really beneficial for me to kind of look at big picture, because how many times, Dan, do we like start writing like a task list on like one of our notepads, and then we start checking these things off, but then we're like, oh my god, I didn't check off two of those things, and then you feel like a complete failure by the time you go to bed,
Mhm.
and you're kind of going from there. So for me, scheduling, I know there's so many ways we can get with this, but let's keep it with the
Oh yeah.
the logistics side. Even when to do like cold calls or when to do follow-ups, even I have a system that I follow, that works for me. So the way that I kind of operate is that I do all my cold outreach in the morning, and then I do my follow-ups in the afternoon, just because it's just been something that's worked for me. But when I look at that one poker chip, so that's what, 60 minutes in an hour. I give myself a target for that hour. I take it hour by hour. I don't take it by the whole day. So if I'm doing email outreach, I'm like, okay, well, let's see if I can bang out 15 to 20 emails, and then I'm going to take a 10-minute break. And some people might not want to hear that, but I think it's so important. I like to go in the backyard with my dogs, or maybe take my dogs for a walk, or really take a walk around the block with AirPods on, but nothing playing. Just let my thoughts kind of like play in the headphones, if that makes sense. And just be
Mm.
like, okay, maybe I should have said this on this call, or different things. And by the way, I want to give everybody a quick shout out here. Like, if you go to our website, you could download that template that Dan put together, where you can actually start writing down things that customers say to each other, and then you can kind of practice yourself in role play. But Dan, when it comes to scheduling to win, there's so many broad things that we can talk about, but I'd love to get
100%.
your thoughts. Where do you want to kind of go with this?
So, I mean, first and foremost, you can't look past what you just said. Um, I love the fact that you said invest. What am I going to invest this chip in? Ryan, that's like number one is scheduling, is how we think about it.
Mhm.
Not, oh my God, I'm tied to this schedule. It's like, this is an investment in
Yeah.
your day, week, month, year, future. And you to use those words, what am I going to invest this chip in? Because every single thing we do is an investment in the future.
Yep.
And when we do a lot of it, it pays big dividends, right? And when we don't do it, we are subject to the rise and fall of the stock market. And that's really what it is. Like, I think before we even go into scheduling, let's talk about why we need scheduling.
Mm.
Because here's the thing. If you have two hot leads on the go and one says no, you worry. If you have 17 hot leads on the go and one says no, it's not a big deal. How do you get 17? You have to make your outbound prospecting calls every day for a certain amount of time. What is that time? I say no less than 2 to 3 hours a day of prospecting. That's my number. Might not be your number. It's my number. Why? Because I don't think with an hour of prospecting a day, you're doing enough work for your future. You're working all in the present. And the present is not where future relationships are built. The present is not where you can double your business.
Yeah.
Sure, can you get more business? Yes, 100%, because if you're present with your customers and you're making things happen. But there's also something to be said where you're always constantly reaching out. Like, I think many people have seen it. They've done nothing wrong and they've lost business
Oh, 100%.
because their customers have lost business. Nothing to do with them. But how do you mitigate that? You have double the customers. So when you lose business, it doesn't hurt as much, right? Like, Ryan, I don't know if you've ever been in a position in this industry where you've done really well, you hit a number, you kind of plateau, you cruise, you don't make very many calls, you think everything's going, and you
Yeah,
lose a
yeah.
customer. And then all of a sudden, your vitality, your life is in jeopardy because you're accustomed to this lifestyle. And then your income doesn't match your lifestyle anymore. Like,
Mhm.
I'm telling, when I was younger, it was crazy. I mean, I was like, 5 grand a week. Are you kidding? Yeah. When I hit it, I was like, yeah, I made it. Like, yeah, man, I made it. I made 20 grand a month. I'm making, and it was like, my take home was 6 grand a month. I was like, this is sweet legally. This is awesome. This is crazy. And then, I kind of cruised and I lost the customer. And all of a
Yes.
sudden I'm down to $1,500 a week. And it was like, oh, okay, well, hold on. I really like that 6 grand, not 3 grand. And I'm like, how am I going to do this? And so it's like, then you sell, build it back up to 10. And then I call it plateau, but I just stopped. I stopped selling. Then I
Okay.
did the
Yeah.
same thing when I hit 15. Then finally, when I hit 15 and dropped back down to 5, I was like, because I was losing customers, I was like, okay, what's going on? That's when I figured out the whole, where would I be if I never lost a customer? And that's when I started scheduling myself that no matter what was happening, I would do outbound reach. I
Yeah.
try and reach new customers. And so, I think part of what we should do is talk about the main things we need to do as sales reps, and then maybe talk about, how to throw them into a schedule. And I know we won't be able to do much of that today.
Yeah.
But throughout the week, I think we should, maybe
Well, let's
to
talk.
start the
I'd
week,
love
let's
to. You know
talk
what?
about
I'd
what
love
we.
to talk about like the conversation that we're having is flowing so nicely. I would love to talk about pipeline, scheduling
Sure.
pipeline. I think that would be amazing. And we talked with Jeb Blunt. We had him on last year, and he's a question I posed to him was like, "Hey, what if somebody says that they have a leaky pipeline?" And he laughed and he says, "There's no such thing as a leaky pipeline. It's either full or it's empty. There's
Yeah.
no in between. Black or white." And how many times do we negotiate with ourselves, Dan? If I do this, I'll do that. If I, if I make these 10 calls, then I could go golfing, or I can go grab this coffee, take an extra lunch, or different things like that. And when you're talking just about, that certain lifestyle that you got to head to, and then you kind of coasted, and then you kind of that ebbs and flows of life, we've all been there. And
Yeah.
it's hard not to because you start getting those lows. That feeling when that dopamine drip when you kind of get that first set of customers, everything's going right, and then you're like, all right, cool, well, I don't need to do anything, because you start planning out like your vacations and like things you're gonna buy and places you're going for dinner, but then you don't think about the long term. And the high performance logistics people that I've seen, they're constantly prospecting. And what has
Yeah.
helped with them, Dan, is that they've made it so you and I, everyone is human beings. You got to eat every day. You got to drink every day. You got to do certain things that are non-negotiables. You got to sleep.
Yeah.
It's a non-negotiable. No matter how long you sleep. The high performance logistics people that I've seen that have been extremely successful is that they've made prospecting and their pipeline a non-negotiable. They don't
Yep.
negotiate with their prospecting or their dreams, especially on like Fridays. Like today, Dan, is a holiday in the US. It's a public holiday. I think it's June 19th, I think is what it's called. And there's people out there that are not working today, but are they still going to be prospecting? Of course they are. Like even with my wife, when we're coming up to Canada's Day by next week or something like that, it's going to be like, well, hey, babe, I'm going to just do these 4 hours that I just need to get out of my thing. And then let's go do whatever we want to do afterwards. So when it comes down to pipeline, Dan, you were talking about when you have two opportunities and you lose one, it's a big deal. That's 50% of your business. But then when you have 17 or 18 or anything plus going and you lose one, you don't really care. And I've seen that too in my career, Dan, where it's just like I got that one big customer. Maybe we got 3 loads today. It's like, okay, cool. But then it's kind of leveled up where I got like 6 customers, and then they're all feeding me 2 loads each. So let's talk about that too. If I do fail on any one of these loads, it's not a big a deal as opposed to like losing on one customer, like failing on there. But I think like scheduling is just when we're talking about pipeline, understand what your pipeline is, and be honest with yourself. I think that's my number one tip with scheduling to
Yeah.
win. Be honest. If you know that this is not going to close, or you don't have an idea, because let's call it spade a spade. A pipeline is usually made to like talk to your manager, whether it be weekly or monthly, like, hey, this is what I'm working on. So we're gonna kind of, I've been there and done that where we'll kind of fluff up things a little bit, but it doesn't get me nowhere because 2, 3 months ago,
Yeah.
when they have the conversation where, hey, Ryan, you said you were going to do this 2, 3 months ago, but nothing has happened. And then you feel the excuse, or they're just slow right now, or, like they move logistics managers, or some kind of BS that you tell yourself that is going to make things right. But I really just think, Dan, you just really have to be honest with where you are and then go from there.
Yeah. And honesty starts with having a pipeline of qualified prospects. Like, just because they're in your system and they said, "Hey, give me some rates," does not mean they're in your pipeline.
So, Dan, let me
And
ask you then,
go for
what
it.
is, just for everyone's watching, what is a qualified lead?
So, a qualified lead is, in my opinion, you understand why they buy. They meet your ideal client profile. Now, and here's one thing I want to make very clear. Um, when we talk ideal client profile, and I know we're going to be talking about this soon, but and we have talked about it in the past, you should, before you make a single phone call, visualize and see and write down that person you want to deal with. Not company, not logo, not volume of freight, the person. Because you do not deal with logos and volumes, you deal with people. And your primary questioning should be to qualify them if they fit your client profile. And the second base in this is why they buy. And third base is fulfill the why, and then you come home. And you can't understand scheduling and you can't really get into pipelines until you understand your client profile and the simple 4-step process. Because when somebody enters your pipeline, they have to be qualified.
Mhm.
Because anybody that comes into, we'll call it your world, right? Like if you just use the whole funnel scenario, right? The pipeline, the funnel, you put a whole bunch of people in and people start popping out the bottom, right? Just if you visualize that. The top of the funnel is where you qualify. Anybody that actually gets in your funnel has to be a qualified lead. So if you just give somebody rates and don't understand why they buy, all you're doing is you're just throwing rates out into the market,
Yeah.
which 99% of the time will probably be used to get the incumbent down that's already being used, right? But why? Why do you need rates? Well, the first thing we do is we see if you're competitive in the market. Okay, so then what would be the determining factor to use me or add me to the mix with your present suppliers? If you don't have that information, I don't think your customer's qualified, even if they're the right person you want to deal with. Because qualification in the 2-step, understanding that they're qualified as a person for you, but more importantly, why are they going to buy your service?
Mhm.
And then you have a good idea. Well, you know what, Dan? We get busy in September. Okay, so if you give me some rates now, I know you're going to be in the ballpark come September. Let's continue the conversation, build the relationship come September. So if I sit down at the end of Q2 or beginning of Q2, where we are now, with my boss or with my manager, I could say, okay, so these 5 guys, we're building the relationship now for September. So they're actually going to go in my pipeline in September.
Mhm.
But it's kind of, so you can diversify that conversation. And that's where the honesty integrity comes out, because you truly have a qualified pipeline. I can't tell you how many people I've helped train, and when we sit down and look at their pipeline, they go away shattered, like shattered, because they thought they had such a full pipeline. And I'm like, it's not. Like, you
Yeah.
can't answer these questions. And when you can answer these questions, they become a qualified lead.
Yeah.
And it's, they go away um like shocked, maybe embarrassed, but it changes in the very next second to say, damn, I'm never going to not have a qualified pipeline. And that's why Jeb can say there is no leaky pipeline. It's either full or it's not. And if you have a pipeline and you have 57 people you're talking to, and you can't answer the question, are they qualified and why they buy? Those two simple questions. I got 5 more, but those two simple questions, they are not actually part of your pipeline. So as Jeb said, it's empty. It's not full.
And I just love everything you just said there, and I love the explanation of like a qualified lead, because like that's like the first step, you know. And I think, you know, you and I take the mindset, even though this whole like season's theme is for, you know, the high performers, but we like to take the mindset of somebody starting brand new, you know, coming in here and what they're kind of doing. So let's call a spade a spade. When you're brand new and you're coming into the industry, the only thing you can do is prospect. You know, so
Yeah.
realistically, like you and like you were mentioning, like 2 to 3 hours early before, when we first get started, maybe you're doing like 6, 7 hours, even up to 8 hours a day, you're prospecting. But understanding
And
that,
imagine doing it as a high performer, even if you're only getting into the industry.
yeah.
Like imagine never making the mistakes you and I made when we first started prospecting.
Oh man. Oh
Like,
man,
wow,
I remember the
how
days I
awesome
just
would
be so
that be?
happy. Oh man, you'd just be so awesome with that, because like I just remember the days like when I first got in the industry and like they're like, "Oh, send me some information." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm getting some loads," you know, like I'm getting we're moving there. All it was current, right? And kind of go from there. So I know that this week is going to be so much
Yeah.
jam-packed information for scheduling to win. Dan, why should people tune in this week?
Well,
I hit
listen,
you
I
off guard
mean,
with that one.
here's the thing. If you've ever wanted to give yourself the up in the industry, then this is the week to do it, because scheduling is everything. It's how you master your day. It's how you master your productivity. It's how you eliminate procrastination, right? It's how you get better. All of it. So go for it. Do it.
There we go. So tune in this week. We'll be every single day at 11 a.m. with amazing guests as we kind of come in here. This is Sales Chatter. As we kind of said, this is the logistics podcast where we aim to help 10,000 reps hit 1,000,000 GP. I'm your host, Ryan Mohamed. With me is Dano as well. So if you found value in this, which I know you did, schedule your time to watch us live every single day at 11 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And with that being said, always share this with a friend, a neighbor, a spouse, anybody, especially the Amazon driver who may be on vacation today in the US. So maybe get a ship to a Canadian PO or something like that. So with that being said, Dano, take us home, my man.
All right, everybody, head over to YouTube, because we are pushing that YouTube subscription. Head over to YouTube and sign up and join Sales Chatter. Join us this week. We've got a bunch of really cool guests on Wednesday. We got the Senior VP of PT Transport, 1,000 Truck Company. We got Beaner coming in. We got all sorts of cool people coming in. It's going to be a good week. So like Ryan said, schedule to watch Sales Chatter at 11 a.m.